Okay, so hi.
Hi.
I know we've already met. My name is Joanna, and I'm here to ask you some quick questions to get to know more about you and where you're from. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you were born, like a little bit about your tribal affiliation?
Yeah. I'll do my native introduction. That's something we always do to introduce ourselves. So, Bonjour, Nanokusque Indigenous, Potawatomi and Thou, Mikizi and Dodum, Machibanatuis and Devondaguas, Bradley and Dutchbia, Mila Welet Dayan. And we do that because it basically tells our entire life story. So my traditional name is Hummingbird Woman. That's the Nanokusque Indigenous. Hummingbird Woman is my name. I come to you from the Matchapanatuish Band of Potawatomi Indians, which is located in Bradley, Michigan / Gun Lake, Michigan. And we're also known as the Gun Lake Tribe. I was born in Bradley in our settlement, Bradley area Indian settlement, but I was raised in Wayland, Michigan, which is literally 5 minutes away. So I grew up in my community, surrounded by my culture. My mom and dad were really, and my grandma, basically my whole family, was a really big influence on making sure that I was surrounded by not only my native community, but also like my family and my culture. And that was essentially my whole childhood from being born to being a child. And even now, growing up, we would do cultural presentations and we would present our culture to the community. My dad was one of the founders of our tribe. He helped get our tribe federal recognition. So that was something really big. A part of my life was being basically a child of like a success story that we built ourselves from the ground up. And when I was little, I could remember running around our tribal government office when it used to be part of a strip mall. And we were next to a dance center and we were in between a movie store. And it was great growing up in an indigenous community because I had such a tight knit, close family. And my family wasn't just my mom, my dad, my grandma. It was my cousin, my uncle, my doctor, who was also my cousin, my social worker, who's also my mom. It was every person that I needed within tribal government or human resources or anything. They were all part of my family too. So I grew up in a really close knit community, which was really nice now that we are a bigger family. We have more people we're connected with, and it's really nice.
Nice. All right. So, what was your experience with K-12 and was indigenous boarding schools taught when you were a kid, like in your education or in your family? Well,
Yeah.
when was it that?
It was, well, in my schooling, I went to Wayland Union schools all throughout K through 12, and it was kind of put on me and my family to be that indigenous perspective, to be that indigenous voice, and to also teach the history of our people because it wasn't taught in indigenous schools. We even did, I remember when I was little, we would make headbands with those cutout feathers to for Thanksgiving. I always thought that's a little weird. We don't do that. And my parents would come into the school all the time to advocate for Native students because I was just one of two, or maybe one of three. And as I got closer and closer to graduating, I was probably one of two or three again. And out of all of our school, I was one of five people of color within my entire graduating class. And there was just a handful of us that were brown, black, not white. And so our education, I remember in probably fifth grade, my history teacher was talking about, we had that little paragraph in the history book about Native Americans, and I was so excited because I thought we were going to talk about our history, talk about the things that happened. And my teacher said, well, they're not really around this area, so we're not going to worry about them. So we're just going to go over this little paragraph, and then that'll be it. And my cousin, who he was a native boy, he had long, beautiful black hair. He looked back at me and he was like, "What?" And I was like, Just let her go, let her go. She's a white lady. She's just in her moment." And he faced a lot more racism and stigma than I would because he had the long hair. And that's something we also had to fight about a lot, was that kids were bullying him, and then I would stick up for him, and then they would bully me. But I'm a strong Native woman, so I would always fight back and then get in trouble with school. And
Yeah.
my mom, she would always fight for me again and say, "Well, what did you do to correct their actions? What were they doing?" And they would say, "Oh, well, they were just having another disagreement with a student." And she was like, "Well, which student?" "Oh, it was the other Native boy." There was something going on. It wasn't them. It was, it's always the boy. It was always the other boy. And so my entire education was always about fighting for my visibility, fighting for my awareness. And that was it was a tough battle that now growing up I realized I shouldn't have had to do. That should have been my educators fighting for me. That should have been, fortunately, my parents fought for me. And I'm really glad that they did, because now Wayland has educated themselves, because our tribe has become so successful. We bring in a lot of revenue to them. We donate a lot of money to them because we have Native students. They're like, "Oh, well, now that they have money, they mean something to us." So that's, it's great that they see us now, but it's hard to see that they only see us because we give them money and that we bring in money to them, that, oh, now they're recognizing us. But I mean, all good things come with certain consequences, so I'm glad that they were getting their recognition. But growing up, it was just like, you had to educate people for yourself, because if you didn't educate them, they would not get that education. And so that's why my parents always believed in doing those cultural presentations. We did presentations at my school. My classmates saw me do presentations. My brother hoop danced for his class. And we would do this all around Michigan, all around the country, as much as we could, because if the schools aren't going to do it themselves, then we need to do it for our children.
Okay. So, what would you say you considered before coming to WMU, and what influenced your decision?
Yeah. I mean, Western has always been my dream school. I've always wanted to come here since like 5th grade, and I found out that Western offered aerospace engineering. That's the program I'm into. That's the program I've always wanted to be in. And when I was younger, my dad would always talk about the Western powwows and how WMU in the 70s and throughout almost the 2000s to 2010s, they had a powwow here. And it was one of the biggest powwows in Michigan. And my dad really loved going to the powwow. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, if I'm going to go to Western, I want to be part of the student organization that has the powwow. I want to be part of that. And when I came here, it wasn't here anymore. So then it became my mission. I was like, well, I want to restart everything that our old NASO had, and that everything that they made. And I want to revive that for not only just myself, but for my community, that they always would come here. My dad would always come here. And my dad passed away in 2017. So it's
Sorry
something that's
about
been a
that.
big part of me, to bring back memories of him and to do things that connect me to him. So Western was always part of my college plan, and I'm really glad that I was able to make it here to be a part of this and to be a part of NASO.
Awesome. So, what would you say are some of your career aspirations or goals? Generally, being a student here, generally in life, what are some of your aspirations?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to work for NASA. That's always been my joke. I want to work for NASA, even if it's as a janitor. Like, I will take out the trash if it means I get to wear a little NASA pin and something that says NASA on it. I'll do it. But in 5th grade, I started really loving the Mars rover projects and the Curiosity rover and everything that just had to do with Mars. I just thought it would be so cool if we were able to go there, but to do it in a way that would be respectful of the ancestors that were already there, and to help revive that planet and make it like a second Earth. And I've always wanted to do that since fifth grade. Before that, I thought I would be a Shamu trainer most of my life. I thought I would train killer whales, but
Ooh.
then they're killer whales, so I don't. That didn't really work out. I'm scared of the ocean now. But yeah, I've always wanted to do something with space, but now coming to Western, I really love doing working with NASO, and that's also been a really big push here. Has been I want to be part of a productive student organization that brings culture back to Western and brings diversity to Western, and I'm I'm hoping that I can do that. And with so much that we've done with NASO, we have Frank Walm here. We have NASO coming up. We have our Indigenous Elders residency program. That's really great. And my career aspects are changing a little bit. I think I want to do more with my community, maybe go into leadership one day. But I always want that engineering background so that I can help be part of that building of that community and even structures if we need it.
What do you think people wish about you, and what are some assumptions people make that you don't like?
Yeah. Um, well, I'm in the engineering program, and that does throw a lot of people off, which I do understand. I'm a very like confident, outspoken person, so I get a lot of assumptions that I'm either in business or public administration, um, which I don't mind. I understand that assumptions is just part of human nature, but sometimes I do wish that I presented more like an engineer than a person in business or leadership or public admin. Not that that's bad, but I I don't I wish people would see me as an engineer, but I get that's not something anybody would assume of me. And I think that's kind of my superpower is that I might look a little I also do tend to see that I do look standoffish to people. But I've worked on that a lot through NASO. They've really helped me become more outward and be more openly approachable to people, which I've really enjoyed. And so I see that people make assumptions about me about just like not wanting to talk to people or just not being an engineer, but it comes with human nature. It's something that I understand it
Yes.
happens, and I do the same thing. I make assumptions off other people. Like I don't know who could be the next president, and that's something that we never know until it happens, and we can make assumptions our whole life and then be completely wrong, which is something fun about being a human is that we're not always right.
Yeah, right. So talking about this, I know you already talked about some assumptions. How about challenges or discriminations that you faced, and how were you able to handle those situations?
Yeah, that is hard because especially being in engineering, I've had some challenges where just being a woman, I've seen myself as not being seen as smart enough, or a lot of the men in my group, they'll just like hand me like the managing tasks. So I all of a sudden become the manager. I'm not an analyst or an experimentalist. So I don't get to do a lot of the like hands-on lab work I want to do. I always get assigned the writing down. And my first year here, I was like, well, that's fine. I mean, as long as I don't have to do a lot of the work and I don't mess anything up. But then the boys started messing up, and I was like, okay, I can't have you guys messing with my grade. So I found that sometimes I just gotta take things into my own hands. And if I seem a little overbearing or a little like too much, I have to push it past myself. I found that I'm like, I can't care about if they think I'm being too much or if I'm being aggressive. I just got to do what I need to do to get my work done and to make sure that I succeed because I can't let some boy who thinks that he knows more than me do more and do it wrong because that's how Apollo 13 blew up or whichever Apollo it was and like just not letting women have a voice, that's how things go wrong. And I've, even as a Native woman, I've had to speak up within our institution about things that do go wrong, like Native education, for one. In one of my history classes, there was a very, very bad way of presenting the Native origin stories that we have, where he just plucked them off of websites that he found that he thought were credible. One of them didn't even exist anymore. So I talked to him afterwards, and he even asked me, like, what religion do natives celebrate, or what do they practice? And everybody was like, oh, naturalism, spiritualism. He was like, no, no, they don't practice that. And I rose my hand. I was like, well, we actually don't claim any religion because there was such trauma brought on us from both Christianity, and we couldn't even practice what we thought was our own religion, which is just kind of naturalism and spiritualism all mixed together. And I'm like, we don't really celebrate, we don't practice anything. You could ask a group what they practice, they'll say Christian. You could ask my dad, and he'll say nothing. And it's a very big mix. So we can't say that Native people practice a religion because we don't. It's very different. It depends on where you are. It depends on who your parents were, if they went to boarding school, if they didn't go to boarding school, what their experience was in boarding school. And he argued with me for a second. He was like, "Well, they did practice Christianity." I'm like, yes, if there was a wooden paddle against their face, yeah. They were forced to, yeah. If that was the decision between life and death, yeah, they were Christian. And he was like, and I'm like, but that wasn't a choice. And he was like, well, yeah, it wasn't a choice. And so I'm like, so we're not Christian. I'm not Christian. I never practiced Christianity. I went to church because that was part of our practice. That was part of our like routine. But that was because we had a settlement church, and that's where we felt safe because that's where a lot of boarding school residents went because that was part of their routine. And I was like, that's not Christianity, that's trauma. And he was like, okay, well, we'll just move on. And I'm like, and then he even gave me a bad score on my view of the origin story, saying it's not actually this person, it's this person. Like,
Wow.
telling me how I interpret my own people. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
And like, thank you to the white man for telling me how to practice my own culture, how I should see my people. Like, oh yeah, that's what I really needed. And I spoke up about that to the Department of Religions and to the people I knew, and that I'm like, this professor, I was like, should he really be teaching that? And that's how we got Frank into that history class. Now we teach Native American music and history because he knows. And with his perspective, he's not going to just be like, oh, well, what do you, this isn't like everything's different. Like he sees it, we're on a spectrum. Every Native person is different. Every Native generation went through something different. And so now things are kind of like a modge podge of what are we doing now? And that's something I've found to be really great is that we have had Frank to do that teaching so that a lot of the issues that we faced here are kind of minimizing. So that just like assumption of what they think is our teachings, we're actually having teachers come in and be like, no, it's different. It's based off of that hereditary trauma, that hereditary history, and what each person has taught the next generation. You can't just learn our history off of a book. You need to live it. And it's really helpful that we have somebody who is lived that history, who does know how to do that education, because now he can talk with those history professors about this is how we need to present this education. We can't just have people read books off of it. We need to learn from the people who've lived it.
Yeah, right. So what would you say has shaped your experiences, especially with school, with your community, in terms of, your race? What are some of the experiences? I mean, what are some of your, I'm sorry, how has your race shaped your experiences growing up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely compared to my best friend who is white, we've lived completely different lives. I mean, from growing up, I've always, like, just in healthcare sense, I've always grown up with IHS, which is Indian Health Services. So we've always had insurance to pay for our doctor visits. I've never had to pay a copay, or I've never had to pay for any hospital visits or any dentist visits. My mental health is something that they pay for as well. Like, I get a scratch, I can go to the doctor, I don't have to pay a cent as long as I go to my clinic. And that's something that has always been something I have to think about a lot and really be grateful that I have, because compared to my friend, she has to pay for her health insurance. She has to pay for going to the doctor. Like, she can't just go to the doctor whenever she feels ill. She has to like really be sick because it's expensive. And if her doctor doesn't take her insurance anymore, she either has to find a new doctor or whatsoever. Like, to me, it's very complicated. And I think that's a big problem within America, is that like we have to worry about our health care. Like, that's something that never came to me growing up, was that I have to worry about how am I going to pay for things, because I've been very fortunate with my tribe that they were so smart to set all these things in place before we even had federal recognition, so that once we got our recognition, we got our grant supplements and our federal funding, so that we were able to have all these really, really nice things that I do take for granted sometimes. And I need to constantly remind myself that not everybody has this luxury. And it is a very, very fortunate luxury that I have, is that I'm able to be raised and cared for by my tribe. And in this current administration, when things are going like very wonky, we don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. My tribe has set up doomsday protocols to in place to make sure that things like our health benefits, our per capita, our just general welfare benefits, like getting food, getting supplies to live every day, they make sure that we have all of that, so that if, our current administration decides to pull funding from everything and try to take everything away from us, we have something in place. And that's something I'm really grateful for. And I see that's differed in my growing up, is that I've always had this like pillar to stand on to keep me safe from everything. And not everybody has that. And I'm really grateful that that's something I have. But it also has had its stigma. Like, growing up, I was never seen as like a good kid. I've always was seen as like a problem child. And that did lean into my skin color a little bit, just because I was like one of 4 or 5 brown kids, or like just not white. And my brothers didn't make that easy for me either. They were problem children in the same school system. So I just got that assumption that whatever I did, even like the times I just fought back on the racism I was already enduring from my classmates, my teachers would just come back on me and be like, well, why did you start that? Why were you arguing with him?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he was trying to pull my cousin's hair. Like, and that's so rude. I like, if he did that to a little white girl, we would be like, oh, that poor little white girl. We feel so bad for her. Like that mean guy. Like, but no, it's me. I'm the mean little savage girl. But I've taken that and like, okay, I will be the mean little savage girl. That means I have to fight for myself, and I will get my mean big mama bear to come in and fight for me too. And she would do that. And she'd be like, well, why are people like, why is this happening? Why aren't you corrected? Like, do something about it. And the school system's just like, well, it's a white boy. And like, my mom was like, okay, then I'm not helping you. Like, if you want to put her in detention, put her in detention. But if she can't make it, she's not going to go, because I had other things to do. And there was always that good and bad. But I was really grateful that I had my tribal community, because if anything did happen in the school system, I was always supported by my tribe. Because if they're like, well, if they're not going to educate you, we'll educate you. So they would tutor me. They would have education specialists come in and help all of us that were struggling because of our teachers in our general school. They would teach us in our educational like tutoring program. So I grew up I would say I was very privileged to have this, and I'm really thankful that I do, because I would I would not be where I am today. I'd probably be in a ditch somewhere if I didn't have my tribe.
Okay. So, how would you say, or what is a good ancestor in your tribe mean to you?
My I believe, as long as you are doing something to be alive, and just you're not doing hard drugs, doing you're not excessively drinking, that's a good ancestor. It's like if you're living a healthy life, that's what our ancestors had in mind for us. They don't care if that it's something I have to remind myself a lot, because I put a lot of pressure on myself to be an engineer, to be this great, like, indigenous person that is like one of one, is like a change maker. But my dad would remind me, he's like, as long as you're alive and you're living and you are healthy, you are living your ancestors' dream. Because our ancestors, they could only imagine, just like, they just want their children to survive. They just want their children to be alive and healthy. And as long as we're doing that, we're being good ancestors. And now you can be a great ancestor by practicing your culture, sharing your culture every day, but just as long as you're alive and healthy, you have that culture in you. You have that bloodline in you. And so as long as you stay healthy and you live till you're 98 or however long you can live, that's being a good ancestor.
Okay, so what are some of the activities or the things you practice in your culture, like songs, dance, food? What are some of the general activities you guys practice in your tribe?
Yeah. So we have what something that just recently happened is maple sugar tapping. And so within Michigan and like Canada, Wisconsin, just the north, we have maple trees that create that really sweet maple syrup. And that's something that is really part of our culture, and it's probably like one of the biggest celebrations we have is when we get to tap our maple trees and start collecting that sap. And we have a whole ceremony over it. We have everybody from around the community comes in to help collect the sap. And when I was younger, it used to be just me, my niece, and my older brother, who he is the head maple sugar man. So we call him the sugar bush. And so he taught us like about collecting it and boiling it down, and that's something really big we do around this time. But normally, just day to day, my dad would always sing to me. I don't really sing anymore because it's still a little painful, but I would always wake up to him with his drum bag, his drumsticks right next to him, and he would just be tapping away, singing some kind of song. And if we were in driving around and we didn't have the radio on, he would start singing a song. And there was always just song in our house. That was really big in our family. My dad was a drummer. He was part of bringing the big drum up to Michigan. And so he was always singing, and that meant that I was always dancing. And so in the summer, we would go to powwows all around the state. And growing up, and even now, I'm a hoop dancer. And so a hoop dancer is a traditional dance that we share with all nations across the country. It's not just within Michigan, but we use hoops like this, and we dance with them. And there's usually like 7 to 20, or I've seen people dance with 100 hoops. And we make stories out of it. We can tell stories through the figures we make, through the way we dance, through the way we shape our hoops together. We'll link them together to make shapes. And that was a storytelling dance that I always loved to do for my dad. And anytime he asked me to hoop dance, I would grab my hoops as fast as I can. I would run out to the arena and start hoop dancing for him. And he would always sing me a song that he was so great at that, because he was like, he knows the tempo I need. He knew the kind of song I need. And I would be able to tell his story of his music through my dance. And it was just a wonderful thing that we had together. And I really enjoyed that, and I miss it a lot.
Nice. So do younger generations practice the same, activity you just mentioned about the dance, about the song? Do younger generations do that?
Yeah, I'm really happy that they do too, because my generation, like the 20 to 30-year-olds, we're not really in it anymore. But we see a lot of like the 10 to 18-year-olds, they're into it. They love to sing, they love to dance. They see it as an expression of themselves, and they're really proud of their culture, which is something that I'm really happy that they're able to have. Because when I was their age, I was proud, I was happy, but I was still a little scared to do it sometimes. And I was really self conscious about it because my education, my just the school I was in, particularly, it wasn't even my community, it was the school I was in, just made me insecure about it. Um, and so to see that our younger generation, they love wearing their native inspired hoodies. They love wearing, we have a lot of indigenous inspired apparel now. So like Nike has N7, which is Native 7, and that's a really big brand, Nike is. So a lot of indigenous youth are wearing N7 all the time. So they have like really cool hoodies and jackets and shoes that they love to wear to school. They love to show up. And they we just recently had a round dance at my tribe, and we had a lot of native youth singing and dancing and just being really proud of their culture. And that's something that I'm really happy to see, is that we do have a lot of youth singing and dancing. We even have within our tribes, we have youth drums. So those youth drums learn the songs that, one of them is actually my nephew. He's the head drummer there, and he sings a lot of my dad's songs. So sometimes at powwows, I'll start hearing my dad's voice in him, and I'm gonna try not to tear up because it's so beautiful that they do that. It's like he's living his dream and he's living my dad's legacy. It's really great.
Nice. All right. So what do you think can be done to promote the longevity of these activities?
I really having native representation within media and having like native celebrities be more of a thing now has really, I think, taken off within that community, that native awareness, and also that celebration of culture, because we have people that are in like Grammy award winning. We had Lily Gladstone just win a Grammy or an Emmy or a award for her work with who was it, Matt Damon or some big white guy. I don't I don't know their names, but
Yeah.
I know Lily Gladstone because she has been such a motivator for our native youth, and seeing her make such amazing strides within Hollywood, that really has motivated a lot of native people to be models and to be actors, to be in media, and to be seen. And I've seen a lot of native youth, they've seen those actors, they've seen those native influencers on TikTok become more popular. And I think that's what has been really motivating our generation to be more proud of their culture, is to see that there are already people getting praise for doing that. And so they want to see something similar. And I want to give them as much praise as I can every time. I follow so many native youth accounts so that I can just give
Yeah.
them as many likes as possible and share their things, because they should be seen. They should be proud of what they're doing.
That's right. That's like encouraging them. That's cool. All right. So, what are some of the lessons you've learned from the past that you think it's going to be important for you in the future? Looking at your identity, where you came from, all the things you've learned, like from school, from your community, everywhere. What are some of the things you've learned that are going to guide your future?
Yeah. Being authentic to who I am has been something super important that I've I've tried to hold back a little bit on, just being my true self, and, celebrating my culture, really getting into ceremonies, because I thought I don't want to be too native. I don't want to be too white. I want to be just the perfect middle. But there's no such thing as that. you can't be one or the other, and there's no such thing as being like the perfect Indian. And that's something I've had to really hone down on, is that like it's okay if I don't go to every single ceremony, if I don't go to every single powwow, every round dance, as long as I show up as who I am. Like right now I'm just in my leggings and hoodie. I usually would, if we had like big events, I'm always in a ribbon skirt, wearing my earrings and making sure that I looked indigenous. But I've had to remind that it doesn't matter if I look indigenous, because I am indigenous. And like I need to, that's something I got to educate people about too, is that no, not every native person is going to be wearing our beaded earrings and our ribbon skirt, or like looking like a person from Twilight. Like we don't look like that. I wish that would be great, but I don't. And not every native person is going to look native. And that's something we need to be proud of, though, is that like we have such a great spectrum, and that we all look different. And that's something I I see a lot of people embrace, is that they don't always wear their ribbon skirts. Sometimes they just wear their earrings, or sometimes they just come as they are. And that still means that we're native people, and that we're here to do what we're here to do, and that we're still indigenous.
So, what would be your advice to current and future Broncos?
Um, just have fun. I think that's something I don't do a lot of myself right now, because I've been so focused on making sure that NASO keeps growing, and that we have this, like, we skyrocket into this big organization. But really just stay in the moment and focus on the fun you're having with NASO. If you're in NASO, if you're not in NASO, if you're just a future Bronco, just have fun while you're here. I mean, get your homework done, study, get that 1 hour a day in every class. Go to class if it's mandatory. If it's not, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. But, have fun while you're here. That's something that I wish I did more my first year, was have more fun, because I was just constantly working with NASO, but that was also fun. And I've found that just like taking that time to breathe, take your breaks, make sure you get all your work done. That's important. But then to, after that, explore, get out there. If you have 15 minutes to stay on campus, take that 15 minutes and just wander a building you've never been in before. They're not going to tell you to get out. I've done that a few times. Like, just have fun while you're here, and make sure that when you graduate, you don't think about, oh, I should have gone to that party. I should have gone to that RSO meeting. Like, make sure you have zero regrets. If you do, like, before graduation, write down everything you've wanted to do before you want to graduate, and do it. Because for some people, you only have one shot. And for some degrees, like within mine, I only get one chance to get a bachelor's. So I want to make sure that I live out my bachelor's degree, my program, very well, and that you get the most out of it, because you do pay a lot to be here. And so you want to just get everything you can out of it, and steal some food while you're at it.
All right. So, could you tell me ways of which um, your traditions can impact the world?
Yeah. I've seen that smudging has become very impactful within just not Native nations, but also other people that want holistic ways to deal with stress. Um, there was a movement where people were doing it in a very, like, just like I would say the hippy dippy people, they were like, oh, it's like we take it from the Native people. I'm like, okay, yeah, you do, but let us educate you about it first. Use it in the correct way. But we've been doing a lot of smudging here at Western, and I've seen that a lot of people have enjoyed that. And we just recently did a medicine bundle, like make your own medicine bundle workshop, where we had a lot of students come in because they want a holistic way to deal with their stress. They don't want to vape, they don't want to smoke, they don't want to drink, and which is great. I'm glad that they don't want to do that. And I'm glad that we're able to give that indigenous holistic healing to them and teach them the right way compared to like just going online and ordering it off of like some Amazon website. Like we harvest our own sage here at the engineering complex where we have a medicine garden, and we're able to share about like the earth is here to provide us medicine, and the earth will give back to you if you give back to it. And I've loved that we're able to spread that message and spread that healing so that our students can have a healthy way to heal and healthy way to cope when finals come around and it's crazy. Like I can already know that when finals come around, it's going to smell like sage everywhere. And I will even be around smudging everybody down because I'm like, we're all going to have good energy. We're all going to pass. We're all going to make it and everything will be fine. And I'm happy to spread that around and spread our medicine around to non-native people, because if we can heal people through our medicine, that's what it's here for. It's not just for us, it's for everybody.
Yeah, right. All right. So, what should WMU, this is going to be the final question. So, what do you think WMU should continue to do to empower Indigenous people now and in the future?
Yeah, I've really been grateful that we have had like Provost Vasquez Helig, Dr. Rodriguez. Our administration has been really supportive of us, and Dr. Montgomery has also been super supportive of us. And I really hope that with the change of Western administration, we continue to have that support, and we also continue to have that collaboration with other student organizations as well as other programs within Western. We did last year where we did a invocation and a indigenous opening for homecoming, and I thought that was really great. I thought that was like really key to what we were doing within our work of the land acknowledgement and also getting indigenous awareness onto campus and indigenous visibility. And we didn't have that this year, but I'm really hoping that next year, with some more collaboration, and if we, keep those pathways, keep those connections open, we're able to have that, invocation and indigenous ceremony again so that we can see more native visibility on campus. And so that we can see, like an indigenous openings, and we can see, maybe one day we get a powwow here. Hopefully we're going to have that indigenous festival soon, and that can be, an ongoing thing that becomes part of Western's, end of winter, activities, is that we have an indigenous festival where we have, every indigenous person can come together and, celebrate our culture on Western.
Okay, all right. Thank you. But is there any other thing you want to add in case I didn't touch base on anything?
I don't think so.
Okay,
great.
then we all good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.